Hello and welcome to the Empowered Women Show, episode number 24.
Welcome to the Empowered Women Show, inspiring women with small voices but big dreams to step up and fulfill their extraordinary potential. And now your host, Casey Lightbody.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Empowered Women Show. I'm your host, Casey Lightbody, and today's guest is Julie Parker. Now, Julie is one of Australia's foremost business and life coaches, with over a decade's experience inspiring thousands of people to create beautiful lives and businesses. As the CEO and founder of the Beautiful You Coaching Academy, Julie passionately trains heart-centered people to bring their talents into the world as life coaches. She truly is an authentic, real, genuine soulpreneur. I can't wait to dive into her story and share her wisdom with you. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Julie Parker of Beautiful You Academy to the show this morning. Thank you and welcome, Julie. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, Casey. I'm just absolutely delighted that you invited me.
Well, I can't wait to dive in. Actually, I've read lots about you on your website. As I mentioned a little bit offline, is that I've been following you from afar just because I feel that our values are so aligned, Julie. And I'd love to dive back a little bit and just hear about your story and the journey that you've been on from where you were to actually now creating this amazing business and becoming the soulpreneur that you really are. So can you take us back a little while to how it all began?
Sure. Well, it's a little bit of a story, so I do promise to try and make it as succinct for you as I possibly can. But I trained to be a social worker at university because I've always had just an intense passion for people and helping them and seeing them become their best. And I worked for almost 10 years in a very low socioeconomic area of Melbourne as a youth and family counsellor, dealing with a lot of really serious issues, clinical mental illnesses, prostitution, teen pregnancy, drug issues. And I absolutely loved that work. And I really, really felt like for the period of time that I was doing that I really was fulfilling my calling, and it was fantastic. But like what can happen with so many people who are working in such a giving profession, I did start to feel a little bit burnt out around about the 9-year mark. And that was about 16 years ago now. And then whether it was by universal fate or complete coincidence, I found out about this new and emerging field of working with people called coaching. And I went along to an information evening and really just knew from the moment that someone started talking about it and how it was a way of working with people that were functioning at quite a high level but really wanted to make something incredible out of their life. And I felt like they were talking to me, and all of a sudden I felt like I needed a coach and I wanted a coach, but I also felt like I wanted to be a coach. And so almost 16 years ago now, I trained to become a coach way back when, before most people even knew what one was. And from there, I slowly built up my, firstly, life coaching business, and I also did some counselling with that for many years. And then I moved exclusively into coaching and then business coaching. Then a couple of years ago, what happened was I was in a very blessed position to be working in my business full-time, and I was developing a very long waiting list. It almost blew out to about 7 months, which is, from a business perspective, a lovely, lovely problem to have, but from a stress perspective, not so great. And I suddenly realised that I really needed to look at what the big picture was for my business and also for my life. And I was by that stage working with an enormous amount of coaches, and they were coming to me and saying, Julie, please coach me. You have the sort of business that I want. I want a waiting list. I want to work with all of these beautiful clients internationally, and I would really love to be able to learn from you about how you do that. And I loved working with them. And then one crazy, slightly fateful day, it really dawned on me that possibly there was a course inside me, and I knew that I didn't want that to be something that was an e-course, because I absolutely loved being able to go much deeper with people than that, and also being able to spend time with them. Now, mind you, I've done some amazing e-courses in my time and I love them, but I knew that they weren't quite right for me to deliver.
Right.
And so that's when I started to think about, did I have a training academy in me? And at first I thought, Casey, I was just going crazy and that was just ridiculous. What a out there thought. But I did what all great coaches should do, and that is consulted a coach, a very good coach who was amazing and had an extremely successful coaching business and had been coaching even longer than I had. So I talked to her about it and I said, look, is this completely nuts? And she was, like any wonderful coach, incredibly supportive and encouraging, and said, I think you should go for it. And I knew in my heart that I was going to do it anyway, but I didn't necessarily expect that a year and a half later, after launching, that we would be where we are. We started with a small pilot, and I was truly blown away by the level of interest in that when I put it out there. Would you like to train in the model that I've developed and learned over many years? We had an extraordinary response and trained that pilot group. And there are now over 120 beautiful You Life coaches from all over the world. And we have more than 80 that are being trained right now at the moment. And we're just about to have our very first Inspiration Day in New York City. And we've got more planned for Sydney, Melbourne, Bali, planning San Francisco at the moment next year. And truly, Casey, I just feel so blessed, and it was obviously the right decision for me to do it. So that's my story.
Well, first of all, I've got goosebumps all over me. I have to just tell you that. It's how inspiring, Julie. What your story is truly, truly inspiring. And it just takes my breath away just listening to what you've managed to accomplish and, really following your heart, really. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm taking away from that is actually... well, the first thing is that you mentioned that you knew it was for you. So when you heard about life coaching, I'd love to dive into that little portion for a little bit, if I may, Julie, and really try to understand like that moment. Like, was it that moment that you went to that talk, or how did that all evolve? I think I have to actually read something from your website. You've said, it is my sacred mission to help you learn to respect and adore yourself and your gifts, and along the way uncover the incredible life you were truly meant to live. Now, really, I mean, that speaks volumes in terms of you recognizing that was your calling. And did that come about at that moment, or how did that actually come about? Or was it something that evolved over time?
I do think that moment at that information session was certainly very pivotal, but it really has also evolved over time. That moment when I was in that information session, I realised for the very first time that there was another way to work with people one-on-one, which I loved and I still do love, even though I don't do it anymore. I miss it. I found a new way of working with people to help really lift them. And I had been doing that in the type of work that I was doing in the mental health field. But the place that I was supporting and lifting and empowering people from was one that was very low. People experiencing homelessness, domestic violence, mental illness. And so their starting point was sometimes at a level that was really quite desperate. And so I'd never really thought about or knew about a way to work with people where you could lift them and support them and help them to achieve the things that they wanted to achieve when they were actually starting from a whole other place. So it was more things like, they were stuck in a dead-end job, or they couldn't understand why they maybe weren't attracting the soul sisters and nurturing friendships and relationships in their life that they wanted, or that they really wanted to develop an amazing self-care and self-loving routine in their life, but really didn't know how to go about that. And I'd never really worked with people in that way before, because the people I was working with, they weren't worried about things like that. They had a lot of other things that they were more concerned about. And I knew as soon as someone started talking about that I wanted to do it. You know, the thought of having conversations with people around self-love and how we can help you be more confident, and what's your dream career, and how do you develop a financially abundant relationship with money, and so many things that different people wanted to achieve. I knew that I wanted to do that. And I was right. As soon as I started doing it, it felt as amazing as I thought that it would, which is really fantastic. But then I think it has most definitely evolved and deepened over time to a point where, for me, the thing that I loved most talking about when I was coaching people, and I still love talking about when training our life coaches, is most definitely our relationship with ourself, and how I feel for myself it's very much my calling to help people understand that they are their greatest teacher, their greatest lover, their greatest friend, and the greatest force of influence in their own life if they nurture that relationship to allow that to be the case.
I love that, Julie. And I think specifically for our audience at the Empowered Woman Revolution, you know, we really are shy, quiet, introverted women who I strongly believe have got such a unique gift that's within us, you know, and it's really the fact that we've actually got to then find the courage to take ourselves on, you know, and I think that's really, that's can be quite a confronting thing, I think, especially as a quiet, shy, introverted woman. What would be your advice, Julie, like having worked with the thousands and thousands of women that you have done, what would be your advice around that for specifically shy, quiet, introverted women to really look within themselves, because they may not be at that stage where they recognize that they've got these unique skills and gifts, whereas you and I really believe and see that each of us does have that special thing inside us.
Well, you know what? I almost feel, Casey, as if you've given the exact answer that I would say there. And that is really that, firstly and foremostly, for every person, this is about recognition and awareness that you are enough and that you are okay, and that you don't have to be anybody that you're not. And that includes if you happen to be, you know, a more extroverted jazz hands type of person, that's okay. You should own that vibrancy that you have in relating to people, and you shouldn't feel as if you need to temper that and tone yourself down, because there are your people out there that will relate to you as long as you relate to you and you own you. And it's the same with, you know, all of those beautiful women out there. And I include my husband in this as well, because even though I identify as being an extrovert, he is an introvert, and I adore him. And we are we're a perfect match, really. We really are that perfect foil for each other. And it really is also about introverted people and that, you know, that quiet, soulful woman understanding that you are okay too, and that we need each other, and owning that more reserved, soulful, quiet nature that you have is the beginnings of you empowering yourself to show up in the world exactly who you are. And then the most wonderful thing happens when we do that. We attract towards us the exact people that allow us to bring that out even more. You know, it's so important that we own that relationship with ourselves first, though, because we cannot hope to attract towards us people who get us, understand us, love us, and nurture us in a beautiful external way if we're not doing that internally for ourselves first.
I love that, Julie. And actually, I got quite distracted because you're wearing a beautiful, bright pink jumper and I'm wearing my beige scarf. And I just think that is just so classic. I think we're both owning who we are, right?
It is most definitely my favourite colour, and I think anybody that looks at my website is clearly going to be able to see that. And I've loved pink since I was a little girl, not necessarily because I identify with being a very Barbie or, type of girl, but I learned years later why I was so attracted to it is because it's the colour of self-love, rose quartz, things like that. So it seems so fitting. And actually for many years I really disowned that pink and more feminine, nurturing side of myself because I thought it wasn't what people wanted to hear or learn from in business. But I've learned that, the more, again, that I embrace every part of who I am, the more that I encourage others to do that as well. So you embrace your beige there.
Thank you.
You look beautiful. It's all good.
And I love that about pink too, though, because I think, and this is really, this is actually maybe a little bit off topic, but I'd love to dive into this a little bit, Judy, was your perspective of what business should look like and then actually embracing this feminine power that you have and actually being able to bring that in to your business and to your brand and really fully embrace it because that again resonates with the type of people that you're trying to attract. So was that like how conscious was that decision? And I might dive into that a little bit more around actually you showing up for exactly, speaking your truth and really showing up for who you really are. And I want to dive into that a little bit more a bit later, but just around that whole idea of embracing this perception of what business should be like, and it might, should be looking professional, and maybe pink's not professional, and all that kind of thing,
Well, Casey, this has actually been a really big part of my journey, and I certainly did not embrace all of that side of myself when I first started my business. When I trained to be a coach, there was very little choice in where you trained and who you trained with. And there was no question that I was trained to be a coach in a model that was quite corporate. I would call it very masculine, quite navy and brown and, really black and white almost, that sort of, there wasn't a lot of room for play. There really was no room, I don't recall at all, for anything such as feminine power, intuition, connecting with your heart, self, all of the things that I now love to teach and talk about in the academy and the way that we train our life coaches to embrace themselves and then help their clients do the same. And so when I started my business, I very much went into it believing that that was what made up a successful business, not even just a successful coach. So I'd never owned a business before. I was a social worker. I'd never done anything like that before. So if you can imagine that my first website was very navy and it had a very strong font and it was quite corporate and Julie does this and this is what you do and this is what you get. And that's what I thought it had to be, because that's what I thought business was and that's what I thought successful business was. And then even though I was attracting a few clients here and there, it really wasn't working in the way that I wanted it to work. And I wasn't really attracting the type of clients that I sort of was dreaming of and that I most wanted to spend time with. And so I decided to redesign my website and I engaged a graphic designer. And every time she said, and I promised myself that this time I was going to create something that I would really love to look at. And every time she sent me through something, it was like, yeah, it's nice. And then one day a darling friend of mine just said to me, she said, Jules, would you just get her to do it in pink? Please, for goodness sake. She said, this has been going on for months and you are driving this poor girl nuts and it's just tell her what you really, really want. Get honest with yourself. And it was such a fantastic piece of advice because it really changed. I think it changed not only my business but my life. So I said to her, how about we try it in pink? And, as soon as it came back, Casey, I was in love with it. And so from that moment on, it was Beautiful You. It was Beautiful You coaching to begin with. And it was a brand and a business that was very warm, feminine, pink, a complete departure from how I started out. And from that time on, from the moment that website went live, I started to attract more clients. I started to attract exactly the type of clients that I was really inspired by and wanted to work with. And everything in my business shifted from there because I finally made the decision to really own my loves, my passion, what I wanted, my feminine, caring nature, and to hell with the navy.
I love
and
it.
the corporate look. And this is me. This is the type of coach I am. If you're not prepared to kind of come and sit in my office and get a big hug and a kiss when you walk in the door, I'm not the person for you. But if that floats your boat and it feels like I could be the person for you, then step right on in and the coffee's on me.
That's just gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. I love it. And I'd love to also talk to you, Julie, about, really you getting real with what you really wanted, again, around your brand and being really clear about who you really were as a person, really started to attract the kind of clients that you wanted. I think I'd love to touch on this other, the sense that I get from you is just service,
Yes.
Julie, it really is around, provide, you're really in business to actually just to help. That's all I can think of is everything that I read about you and that kind of thing. And really, it's this whole idea of soulpreneur, being a soulpreneur.
Yeah.
Now, I'd love to touch on this a little bit because it's really where I'm coming from a place of, really just wanting to help people. But then you've got, and so many people that I seem to attract is that they're just out there to help, to serve, and to really just lift people up. And with whatever unique gift or strength that they've got, they're coming from a place of service. And yet there's this fear around it being actually commercially viable, and now how do you balance it? And now I would love to dive into, you've obviously been massively successful from a commercial point of view and created this amazing academy, multiple six-figure business, and yet you've managed to maintain that whole idea of actually just being able to serve people. What do you have to say about that, Julie?
Oh, this is such a great question. And it is such a fantastic area to speak about because I truly do believe that there are still a lot of people out there that believe that potentially you cannot make money from doing something that you love, no matter what that is. And that also really you can only create a financially abundant business if you're doing something that is, say, for example, very, very tangible and it's not service orientated in some way. And you know what? It's just not true. It really, really isn't true. It's all about understanding, firstly and foremostly, what your gifts truly are as a giving person. Because, especially as a woman, because there are so many ways that you can make money from being in service to others, and you can do it in a way that is deeply respectful, soulful, feminine, empowering, nurturing, and you can still make a lot of money. And I think that a lot of people think that the two are mutually exclusive, that you have to be a rat, you have to be a hard ass, you have to be really masculine and cut and dry, you have to screw people over, you have to, all of those sorts of things. And it's just not true. It's a myth and we need to shatter it because there are so many amazing women out there that have the capacity to create incredible abundance for themselves personally and also for their families as well. But I think that they are held back by many things, but one of the things that they're held back from is thinking, but you can't make money from that. And you can. And, you know, if I can do it by really tapping into my gifts, then anybody can do it. I was a social worker. You know, I went to a small country high school. Social workers, what they get paid. Oh, my goodness,
exactly.
Terrible.
They need medals for sure.
Oh, my gosh, absolutely terrible. And I knew nothing about business, and I've learned and I've invested in myself and my business, and I've taught myself many different things. And truly, if I can do it, then others can as well. And it's also, Casey, about not only just tapping into your own gifts and really believing that you have the capacity to do it and the will to do it, and you've, of course, got to implement and follow through, but then it's about understanding what is the very, very significant need of the people that you most want to serve. Because it's fantastic to own your gifts, but then the really significant part of this is how does that then match up with the needs of who your ideal clients or ideal people that you want to work with are. And if you can get those two things working together really well, owning your gifts, implementing, really investing in yourself and putting yourself out there, combined with understanding what your people most want and then being in service to them for that, then you can create an incredibly financially abundant career and business for yourself. It's not easy. I'm not going to sit here and say that it is easy. It requires a lot of hard work and a lot of growth and self-development, but it can be done. And I, for one, just am always so incredibly inspired, not specifically by women in business, but specifically by incredibly authentic women in business who are in service. That, to me, I'm like, can I talk to you? Can we talk? Can we, I'm just very, very excited by women like that. I love any woman that has the courage to start any business. But for me, any woman that is in a business that is in a serving capacity to other people, there's something about those women that just really inspires me. It just lights my heart up.
Oh, and you said my key words, real and in service. I think those are the two things. I'm like, oh yes, I'm speaking to that person. I'm so excited. Julie, I'd love to talk to you about that a little bit more. Is that whole, you've been, one of the testimonials on your website is how real and relatable you are. And I think that is just such a great, again, gift that you can bring to people. How have you managed to maintain that over the course of you being in business? And really, what has that meant to you in terms of growing your business?
Casey, it's everything. It's absolutely everything. I think that we've probably all had moments in time in our life where we've tried to be somebody that we're not, in an attempt to maybe fit in or, draw someone to us in some way. And that might have worked maybe temporarily, but really it didn't leave us with that incredible feeling that we're all looking for in our lives, which is just to be at peace and happy with ourselves and who we really are. And I think it really does come back to that pivotal moment with my brand, because as soon as I was able to authentically step into that brand and own who I really wanted to be in a visual sense out there to the world through my website and things like that, that was really when things shifted for me, and I was able to understand I think the very, very first time in my life how incredibly powerful being and owning your true authentic self, no matter who that is for you, how amazing that is in regards to all of the doors and things that it can create and open for you. It drew clients towards me. It helped me create more financial abundance in my life. It drew incredible peers and colleagues, friendships, opportunities, beautiful opportunities to speak with people such as yourself, to travel, to be invited to speak at different places. And I just couldn't give it up. And I just realized that the more that I showed up in the world as myself, flaws and all, but really embracing who I was and saying to people, this is who I am and this is what I believe in. And my core belief is that business is all about love and service and giving, that it just felt so amazing, and it allowed me to create the business that I truly only ever thought was a dream, but now I know is a reality. And it's just so wonderful that for me, there is now just no other option but to keep embracing and showing up. And that means change. I'm going to change. We all change all the time, and being at peace with that and flowing with it where I can, and pushing back against myself sometimes and moving forward. It's not always a direct path, but there's just no other way for me to be now. And it's one of my great roles as a teacher, I think, in the academy, is to try and inspire our life coaching trainees to understand that the greatest power in their business is their authentic self. And that if they embrace that, all of their flaws, their fabulousness, their passions, their loves, their interests, their quirks, that is what will draw towards them the best clients for them. And that in turn is going to grow their confidence. It's going to see them do brilliant and amazing work and create the life and business that they want. And that's what I want for them.
Oh, that's gorgeous. That's gorgeous, Julie. Now, I'd love to touch on it because you did bring it up. And I think it's, straight away I'm hearing, that you are just showing up really as yourself, flaws and all. And I think that takes, again, tremendous courage as a woman to really be able to, if you are going to embrace your true self, to actually be prepared to actually show your flaws too. And I know entrepreneurship is certainly it's not a straight path, as you said. It's certainly got its ups and downs, and it's not easy, And so for you, what has been like one of your biggest, and I know there's probably lots, but can you identify one of your biggest challenges on your journey so far, Julie?
Oh, I'm so glad that you mentioned that it's not a straight line, Casey, and there are challenges all the time. And you know what? I'm not sure that I can really say that there's one big challenge that I can think of, but truly, in being very honest with everyone, there are challenges that I have to face, every day that pop up, or every week, or sometimes every month in different ways. Being a heart-centered person, I can be very sensitive. And so if something goes wrong, where, someone is not happy, I have to be very mindful of myself that I don't take that on personally. That is a constant work in progress for me, especially when you're dealing really with people's lives. This is not just a simple transaction that we're talking about.
That's right.
We're talking about, cradling and nursing and inspiring and giving to people over a 6-month period. And so if one of our trainees is struggling, or they're not quite getting something or what they need, that is a big challenge of mine. I have to be very, very careful that I don't come in as big mother nurturer and I want to fix it all. And, this is about helping people to grow. That is a constant challenge for me. I will openly admit that money and my relationship with money and financial abundance is an ongoing thing for me. I was raised by a single mum, and, we really just scraped by as a family, when I was younger. And so for me, now having beautiful financial abundance is something that honestly I'm still getting used to.
Wow. And
there is a part of me that is not 100% sure that I'll ever be fully used to it, but I'm trying to be. So that's something I've got to be careful about. Casey, I work too hard.
Yeah, don't we all?
I work too hard. I am not here to tell everyone. That is a constant challenge for me. I have a beautiful, wonderful life, and I do so many amazing and interesting things outside my business. But I'll be the first to put up my hand and say that I probably work too hard, and I probably need to take more time out for myself more often. So there are challenges everywhere, and all I can do is just constantly try and focus on my own self-love and self-care and just manage it and get better at it, but always through the lens of self-compassion. That to me is the key.
That's awesome,
to
yes.
never beat myself up about things, but to constantly understand that I'm always learning, we're always learning, and we can always do things better. But at the same time, it's so important that we just go, you know what, on some days, that's all I can manage. That's all I can manage today. That's all I can do today. And that's enough. And then tomorrow, maybe it will be better. Yeah. So, yes, there's this.
Love it.
All the time.
Julie, yeah. I'd love to touch on the first one that you raised, because I think you're actually speaking to an audience of sensitive nurturers. I think as women in general, I think we have that tendency to really nurture, but I think also as sensitive women, we tend to want to dive in and fix things. So when we're being of service to other people, we tend to want to try and, make it all better, put the Band-Aid on and just make it all better, So in terms of, the experiences that you've had in business and really recognizing and being aware that this is a challenge of yours, what are the strategies that you adopt to kind of overcome that on a day-to-day basis?
I think probably the most important one, Casey, is just to actually recognize, which is a very, very strong coaching principle that we teach in the academy, and that is that if I fix it or I do it for someone else, it is a temporary solution. It might be exactly what that person wants and even feels that they need at that given moment. And we may even know, I can fix that. I can fix that for them in an absolute flash. But is that actually empowering them to be able to move forward with dealing with other issues and challenges that may pop up in their life? Many times I would probably like to suggest it won't, because empowering someone to help them fix the situation themselves or helping them find the answers within themselves is a much more empowering thing to do for someone. And this has got to do with ego as well. Because sometimes when we know that we can fix something or we know that we can do something really well, it gives us a sense of satisfaction to be able to sort of charge in there on our white horse and go, I can fix it for you. And that can feel really great, and you feel needed and you feel wanted and you feel confident, but it's not necessarily then going to help that person be able to move forward, as I mentioned before, with other challenges. So asking people powerful questions to be able to help them come up with their own answers is a much more person-centered and service-centered way to go about things, rather than I'll take that off you and I can fix it. Yeah. And that's hard, because sometimes, as I said, for me, that's a challenge for me. It's like, I can do that for you. That's okay. I'll do that for you. That's fine. But it's not going to have the lasting impact that helping somebody find the answers themselves will.
I think that's gorgeous, Julian. I love that you actually said that it's a temporary solution. So when you've got that mindset that it's just a Band-Aid, literally, that you're going to, and it's, it's just going to, just a kind of temporary solution, and it's not something that's really going to be fully of service to that particular person in the long run, I think is a great way of looking at it. I love that. So the last one, and before we dive into our lightning round, Julie, the last point that I'd like to raise is how you actually managed to pivot and really listen to your heart around how your businesses developed. So, something that you said was a dream of yours, and that you never probably had the vision of having a training academy, and yet you really listened to your community and really got to understand what was going to be of best service possibly to them and to yourself. How did you tap into that whole idea? Because some people certainly in my community have got this vision, and they probably have got a vision that what's possible is maybe even bigger than the vision that they potentially have at that point, which sounds what that's what you had, right? And so how did that grow and evolve, and how did you actually weave your way into figuring out that that's really what you wanted to do, and what was the next step for you?
I think it's a really, really great question. And I think the best way for me to describe it is that it started to become a calling.
Okay.
My head just would not shut up about it. I was at that point in my business where I knew that I could not continue having a 6-month waiting list. It was untenable and unmanageable. I couldn't move forward. So I knew that I had to do something different. And I really, from the moment that I knew that things couldn't continue the way that they were continuing, Casey, truly, I'm not sure where it came from, but I started to hear this intuitive voice, my heart, say to me, you need to start training life coaches in the model that you have developed. And as I mentioned, at first when I heard that voice, I completely dismissed it. I thought, that is ridiculous. You cannot compete with the big players. This is stupid, Julie. Come on. Now, you've had some ideas before, but really, this takes the cake. You're talking about something that is so huge here that, like, honestly, you're working from home with a cat in your lap. Like, come on now. Come on. But you know what? I wouldn't shut up. It just kept coming back and back and back and back, to the point where it started to drive me spare. And that's when I thought, okay, maybe there is some merit here, but I still didn't trust it quite enough. And so I went to see a coach. And I think, like so many people, I just needed somebody to put their hand on my shoulder and say, go for it. And of course, we can't always wait for that external validation. But from the moment that she said that, somebody that I deeply trusted and loved and admired, it started to take more shape and form, and then I just couldn't stop it. I became so inspired and excited about it that I went home and I started to write. And I've written now training manuals, and they're 25,000 words long. They're absolutely huge. And it just became something that just couldn't not be done. It was that calling that I think sometimes we all experience in life. That is the biggest calling that I've ever had. And I think when something is a calling, you will know it, because it will just keep coming back and back and back to you. And I think stepping into it and having a go is really the only way that you're going to shut yourself up. And that's what I decided to do. And I kept saying to myself all the time, it's okay. You can do the pilot. And if it's a complete flop, doesn't matter. It's all right. It's okay. Maybe you'll do one of these a year, and that might alleviate some of the waiting list. It's okay. It's all right. You just have a go, have a try. And I didn't necessarily at that time truly believe that it would become what it has become. That was something that evolved. But I think that is what happens when we follow follow a calling. That calling that we follow may in fact just be the tip of the iceberg of what is possible. Yeah. And that's to be there. And so if anyone's hearing that voice,
goodness.
and it's the same voice and it's the same idea, and maybe you're trying to trick yourself because you're dressing it up in different forms every now and again, you're trying to tell yourself something. Yeah. And that is that you need to follow that and be prepared for the fact that it might just be the tip of what's about to happen for you.
That's gorgeous. I love that. That's got me goosies as well. That's just lovely. It's just so inspiring, Julie, and I think our listeners are really just going to take away so many takeaways from that in terms of just, putting that inner critic behind and just shutting it out, following your heart, having a support network is so key, as you showed us. And I think there's just heaps of takeaways there. So thank you. Now, I'd love to wrap up with, do you have a business quote or life quote that you live by every day?
Authenticity breeds abundance.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Simple, but so true.
Yeah, that's it.
Love it. And do you have, we talked about so many inspiring women out there, and particularly, do you have someone, and you mentioned how you really connect with, real women, Julie, that are being of service, but is there a specific woman that really inspires you and why?
I think collectively, Casey, it's very much, I'm deeply inspired by lots of incredible coaches and women who are in service, women such as Danielle Laporte, Nisha Moodley, Selena Sue, Rachel McDonald. These women are just truly inspiring to me. But you know what? I just cannot go past, from a big picture perspective, just a lady who I find so incredibly inspiring, and I know so many other people do too, and that is Oprah. She just embodies for me what it means to overcome, to serve, to give, to inspire, and create a life for yourself that is just so steeped in just being yourself and shining your lights and gifts out to the world. I know that may sound cliche to mention her, but you know what? Authenticity is about owning your cliche. It's like, if you listen to Daggy Air Supply, we've got to own it. If you, all of that sort of stuff. And for me, just my big, big Daggy crush is Oprah. And I just honestly can't see that ever shifting.
I love that, because I've actually got, you can't see up there, but I've got the Oprah Award for a business course that I did, because I just love Oprah too. I'm like the biggest fan.
What is this?
Oh, I know.
What? There's an Oprah Award.
Oh dear, it's hilarious. But I'm such a I'm her biggest fan too. She really is. She is so inspiring. She's awesome. Yeah. Now, I'd love to wrap up, Julie. One of the questions that I wrap up with all my guests is, what do you think is the single most barrier to female entrepreneurship today?
It's lack of self-love. It's not got to do with how well you balance your books or what you weigh or look like or how fancy your website is. I truly believe that the biggest barrier that female entrepreneurs face, even if they don't necessarily realise it, is not loving and believing in themselves enough to truly, truly do all of the things that they need to do to make their business a success, to say yes more than they say no, to put themselves out there, to own that brand that they really want to have, to set boundaries and know that those love fences surrounding them are the things that they need to do to protect themselves, to have the confidence to really put themselves out there and own everything that they want to do. The more that we love and honour and care for ourselves as female entrepreneurs, the more successful our businesses are. it all starts from in here. It starts with love and it morphs out into the world as business success. At least that's what I believe.
And I believe that too. And it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous way to end, Julie. Thank you so much for your time. It's been truly, truly magical speaking to you. And I'd love to direct all our listeners to your beautiful site, your beautiful pink site. So where can we send them?
Yeah, you can find us at beautifulyoucoachingacademy.com. That's where we live.
That's gorgeous, Julie. Thank you again for your time. It really has been truly inspirational.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Casey. And thank you so much for, really asking such beautiful questions. And, what a gorgeous way to spend part of my day talking about just my favourite topics in the world, love and business and women. So thank you.
That's gorgeous. Thank you, Julie.
Pleasure.
And that wraps up another episode of the Empowered Women Show. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And if you have a chance and you enjoyed this episode, it would really mean the world to me if you would head on over to iTunes and leave me an honest rating and review of the show. That way you'll help boost rankings and really shine the spotlight on these amazing women guests. You'll find the link in the show notes over at www.empoweredwomenrevolution.com. Thank you so much and see you next time.